The Story of Beowulf, translated from Anglo-Saxon into modern English prose, by Ernest J. B. Kirtland. Part 5. Then the hardy one himself, with his troop, set forth to tread the seashore, going along the sands, the wide sea beaches. The candle of the world shone, the sun that was shining from the south. And joyfully they journeyed, and with courage they marched along, to where they heard by inquiring that the good prince of earls, the banesman of Ongentheow, the young war-king, was giving out rings within the city, and quickly was made known to High Gellic the coming of Beowulf, that he, the prince of warriors, the comrade in arms, was returning alive and hale from the battle-play, was coming to the palace. And straightway was there room made for the foot-guests on the floor of the hall by command of the king. And he that had escaped scot-free from the contest sat with the king, kinsman with kinsman, and the lord with courteous speech saluted the brave man with high swelling words. And the daughter of Hereth poured forth from the mead-cups throughout the great hall, for she loved well the people, and carried around the drinking stoups to each of the warriors. And Aigellic began to question his comrade, as curiosity prompted him as to the journey of the sea-geats. How went it with thee, dear Beowulf, in thy faring, when thou didst bethink thee suddenly to be seeking a contest o'er the salt waters in battle at heart, and thou didst requite the widely known woe which Hrothgar was suffering, that famous lord? And I brooded o'er that mind-care with sorrow-whelmings, for I trusted not in the journey of the dear man, and for a long time I bade thee not a whit to be greeting the murderous stranger, but to let the South Danes themselves wage war against Grendel. And I now give God thanks that I see thee safe and sound. Beowulf answered, the son of Ethgau, O Lord High Gellic, it is well known to many a man our famous meeting, and the battle we fought, Grendel and I, on the wide plain, when he was working great sorrow to the Danes, and misery forever. All that I avenged, so that no kinsman of Grendel anywhere on earth needed to boast of that uproar by twilight. No, not he of that kindred who liveth the longest, encircled by the fen. And first, to greet Hrothgar, I went to the ring-hall, and straightway the famous kinsman of Hilfdene, when he knew my intention, gave me a place with his own son, and the troop was all joyful. Nor ever have I seen greater joy amongst any hall-dwellers under the arc of heaven. Sometimes the famous queen, the peace-bringer of the folk, walked over the whole floor and encouraged the young sons. And often she gave to the man a twisted ring ere she went to the high seat. And sometimes for the noble band the daughter of Hrothgar carried the ale-cups to the earls at the end of the high table. And I heard those who sat in that hall calling her Freya Weru, as she gave the studded treasure to the heroes. And she, young and gold-decked, is betrothed to the glad son of Froda. The friend of the Danes and the guardian of the kingdom has brought this to pass, and taken that counsel, so as to set at rest by that betrothal many a slaughter feud and ancient strife. And often it happens that a little while after the fall of a people, the deadly spear seldom lieth at rest though the bride be doughty. And this may displease the lord of the Hethobords and all of his thanes of the people, when he with his bride walketh over the floor, that his doughty warriors should attend on a noble scion of the Danes, and the heirloom of the ancients should glisten on him all hard, and the ring-sword, the treasure of the Hethobards, whilst they might be wielding weapons, till the day in which they risked their own and their comrades' lives in the battle. Then said an old spear-warrior, who had remembered all that had happened, the death of men by spears, his mind was grim, and he began with sorrowful mind to seek out the thought of the young champion by broodings of the heart, and to awaken the war-bales. And this is what he said: Canst thou recognize, my friend, the dire sword which thy father carried to the battle, under the Visord helm, on that last journey, when the Danes slew him and had the battlefield in their power, when Withergild lay dead after the fall of the heroes? Now here the son of I know not which of the slayers, all boasting of treasures, goeth into the hall and boasteth of murder, and carrieth the gift which thou shouldest rightly possess. Then he exhorteth and bringeth to mind each of the occasions with sorrowful words, until the time cometh that the thane of the bride dieth all stained with blood for the deeds of his father, by the piercing of the sword, having forfeited his life. But the other thence escapeth alive, for he knows the land well. Then the oath-swearing of earls is broken on both sides, when deadly enmities surge up against Ingeld, and his love for his wife grows cooler after whelming care. And for this reason I reckon not sincere the friendliness of the Hetheborgs towards the Danes, or the troop peace between them, the plighted troth. Now I speak out again about Grendel, for that thou knowest full well, O giver of treasure, how went that hand-to-hand fight of the heroes, when the jewel of heaven glided over the world. Then the angry sprite, the terrible and evening fierce foe, came to visit us where we were dwelling in the hall all safe and sound. There was battle impending to Hundsio, the life-bale to the doomed one, and he first fell, the champion begirt. For Grendel was to the famous Thane a banesman by biting, and devoured whole the dear man. Nor would he, the bloody-toothed slayer, mindful of bales, go out empty-handed any sooner again, forth from the gold hall. But he proved my strength of main, and ready-handed he grasped at me. An ample and wondrous glove hung fast by cunning bands, and it was cunningly fashioned by the craft of devils, and with skins of the dragon. And the fierce doer of deeds was wishful to put me therein, one among many. But he could not do so, for I angrily stood upright. And too long would it be to tell how I requited all evil to that scather of the people, where I, O my liege lord, honored thy people by means of good deeds. He escaped on the way, and for a little while he enjoyed life pleasures, but his right hand showed his tracks in heart, and he sank to the bottom of the sea, all abject and sad of heart. And the lord of the Danes rewarded me for that battle rush with many a piece of plated gold, and with ample treasure, when morning came, and we had set ourselves down to the feasting, and there was singing and rejoicing. And the wise man of the Danes, who had learned many things, told us of olden days. And the bold in battle sometimes touched the harp strings, the wood that was full of music, and sometimes he gave forth a song that was true and sad, and sometimes, large-hearted, the king related a wondrous spell well and truly, and sometimes the old man, encumbered by years, some ancient warrior, lamented his lost youth and strength in battle. His heart was tumultuous when he, of many winters, recalled all the number of them. So we rejoiced the livelong day until another night came down upon men. Then was the mother of Grendel quickly ready for vengeance, and came on a woeful journey, for death had carried off her son, that war-hate of the Geats, and the uncanny wife avenged her child, and Aesher, that wise and ancient counselor, departed this life. Nor when morning came might the Danish people burn him with brand, the death-weary man, nor lay the beloved man on the funeral pyre, for she bore away the body in her fiendish grip under the mountain streams. And that was to Hrothgar the bitterest of griefs which for long had befallen the prince of the people. Then the prince, sad in mood, by thy life entreated me that I should do a deed worthy of an earl, midst welter of waters, and risk my life and achieve glory. And he promised me rewards. I then discovered the grim and terrible guardian of the whelming waters, at the sea's bottom, so wildly talked of. There was a hand-to-hand engagement between us for a while, and the sea boiled with gore. I cut off the head of Grendel's mother in the hall at the bottom of the sea, with powerful sword, and I scarce saved my life in that conflict. But not yet was my doomsday, and afterwards the Prince of Earls gave me many gifts, he the son of Hilfdene. So in good customs lived the king of the people, nor had I lost the rewards, the meed of strength. For the son of Hilfdene bestowed upon me treasures according to my choice, which I will bring to thee, O my warrior king, and graciously will I proffer them. Again, all favor depends on thee, for few chief kinsmen have I save thee, O Hygelac. He commanded them to bring in the boar, the head sign, the battle-steep helmet, the hoary byrnie, the splendid war-sword, and then he chanted this song. It was Hrothgar, the proud prince, who bestowed upon me all this battle gear, and a certain word he uttered to me, that I should first give thee his kindly greeting. He said that Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, possessed it a long while, nor formerly would he be giving the breast-weeds to his son, the brave Roreward. Though dear he was to him, do thou enjoy all well. Then I heard that 4 horses of reddish-yellow hue, followed the armor, and thus he did him honor with the horses and gifts. So should a kinsman do. By no means should they weave cunning nets for each other, or with secret craft devise death to a comrade. His nephew was very gracious to Hygelac, the brave in strife, and each was striving to bestow favors on the other. And I heard that he gave to Hygd the neck-ring so curiously and wondrously wrought, which Wealhtheow, a daughter of royal birth, had given him, and 3 horses also slender and saddle-bright, and her breast was adorned with the ring she had received. And Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, so famous in warfare and in good deeds, bore himself boldly and fulfilled his fate, nor did he slay the drunken hearth comrades. He was not sad-minded, but he, the battle-dear one, by the greatest of craft known to man, held fast the lasting and generous gift which God gave him. For long had he been despised, so that the warriors of the Geats looked not upon him as a good man, nor did the lord of troops esteem him as of much worth on the mead bench. Besides, they thought him slack and by no means a warlike atheling. Then came a change from all his distress to this glorious man. Then the prince of earls, the battle-brave king, commanded that the heirloom of Hrethel, all decked out in gold, should be brought in. For of swords there was no more glorious treasure among the Geats. And he laid it on the bosom of Beowulf, and gave him 7,000 men, and a building and a throne. And both of them held the land, the earth, the rights in the land as an hereditary possession. But the other, who was the better man, had more especially a wide kingdom. And in after days it happened that there were battle crashings, and Hygelac lay dead, and swords under shields became a death-bane to Heardred, when the brave battle-wolves, the Swedes, sought him out among the victorious ones, and sailed with Strife the nephew of Hereric. And it was then that the broad kingdom came into the possession of Beowulf, and he held sway therein 50 winters, and a wise king was he, that old guardian of his country, until on dark nights a dragon began to make raids, he that watched over the hoard in the lofty cavern, the steep rocky cave, and the path thereto lay under the cliffs, unknown to men. And what man it was who went therein I know not, but he took from the heathen hoard a hall bowl decked with treasure, nor did he give it back again, though he had beguiled the guardian of the hoard when he was sleeping by the craft of a thief. And Beowulf found out that the dragon was angry. And it was by no means of his own accord or self-will that he sought out the craft of the hoard of the dragon, who inflicted such evil upon himself, but rather because, being compelled by miseries, the slave fled the hateful blows of heroes, he that was shelterless, and the man troubled by guilt penetrated therein, and soon it came to pass that an awful terror arose upon the guest. And in the earth-house were all kinds of ancient treasures, such as I know not what man of great thoughts had hidden there in days of old, the immense heirlooms of some noble race, costly treasures. And in former times death had taken them all away, and he alone of the warriors of the people who longest lingered there, full lonely and sad for loss of friends was he, and he hoped for a tarrying, that he but for a little while might enjoy the ancient treasures. And this hill was quite near to the ocean waves, and to the sea nesses, and no one could come near thereto. And he, the guardian of rings, carried inside the cave the heavy treasures of plated gold, and uttered some few words. Do thou, O earth, hold fast the treasures of earls, which heroes may not hold. What? From thee, in days of yore, good men obtained it. Deadly warfare and terrible life-bale carried away all the men of my people, of those who gave up life. They had seen Halljoy, and they saw the joys of heaven. I have not any one who can carry a sword, or polish the gold-plated cup, the dear drinking flagon. The doughty ones have hastened elsewhere. The hard helmet, dight with gold, shall be deprived of gold plate. The polishers sleep the sleep of death, who should make ready the battle grim. Likewise the coat of mail, which endured in the battle, was shattered over shields by the bite of the iron spears, and perishes after the death of the warrior. Nor can the ringed byrnie go far and wide on behalf of heroes after the passing of the war chief. No joy of harping is there, nor mirth of stringed instruments, nor does the goodly hawk swing through the hall, nor doth the swift horse paw in the courtyard, and death-bale hath sent away many generations of men. Thus then, Sad at heart, he lamented his sorrowful plight, one for many, and blithely he wept both day and night, until the whelming waters of death touched his heart. And the ancient twilight scather found the joyous treasure standing open and unprotected. He it was who flaming seeks the cliff sides. He, the naked and hateful dragon, who flieth by night wrapped about with fire. And the dwellers upon earth greatly fear him, and he should be seeking the hoard upon earth, where old in winters he guardeth the heathen gold, nor aught is he the better thereby. And thus the scather of the people, the mighty monster, had in his power the hall of the hoard 300 years upon the earth, until a man in anger kindled his fury. For he carried off to his liege lord the plated drinking flagon, and offered his master a treaty of peace. Thus was the hoard discovered, the hoard of rings plundered, and a boon was granted to the miserable man. And the Lord saw for the first time this ancient work of men. Then awoke the dragon, and the strife was renewed. He sniffed at the stone, and the stout-hearted saw the footmark of his foe. He had stopped too far forth with cunning craft near the head of the dragon. So may anyone who is undoomed easily escape woes, and exile who rejoices in the favor of the yielder of the world. The guardian of the hoard along the ground was eagerly seeking, and the man would be finding who had deprived him of his treasure while he was sleeping. Hotly and fiercely he went around all on the outside of the barrow, but no man was there in the waste. Still he gloried in the strife and the battle working. Sometimes he returned to the cavern and sought the treasure vessels, and soon he found that one of the men had searched out the gold, the high heap of treasures. The guardian of the hoard was sorrowfully waiting until evening should come, and very furious was the keeper of that barrow, and the loathsome one would fain be requiting the robbery of the dear drinking stoup with fire and flame. Then, as the dragon wished, day was departing. Not any longer would he wait within the walls, but he went forth girt with baleful fire. And terrible was this beginning to the people in that country, and sorrowful would be the ending to their lord, the giver of treasure. Then the fiend began to belch forth fire, and to burn up the glorious palace, and the flames thereof were a horror to men. Nor would the loathly air-flyer leave aught living thereabouts. And this warfare of the dragon was seen far and wide by men, this striving of the foe who caused dire distress, and how the war-scather hated and harmed the people of the Geats. And he hurried back to his hoard, and the dark cave-hall of which he was lord, ere it was day-dawn. He had encircled the dwellers in that land with fire and brand. He trusted in his cavern, and in battle and his cliff-wall. But his hope deceived him. Then was the terror made known to Beowulf, quickly and soothly, namely that his very homestead, the best of houses, the throne of the Geats, was dissolving in the whelming fire, and full rueful was it to the good man, and the very greatest of sorrows. And the wise man was thinking that he had bitterly angered the wielder of all things, the eternal God, in the matter of some ancient customs. And within his breast gloomy brooding was welling, as was by no means his wont. The fiery dragon had destroyed by flame the stronghold of the people, both the seaboard and the neighboring land, and therefore the king of the Wettergeats devised revenge upon him. Now Beowulf, the prince of earls and protector of warriors, commanded them to fashion him a glorious war-shield all made of iron, for he well knew that a wooden shield would be unavailing against flames. For he, the age-long noble atheling, must await the end of days that were fleeting of this world life, he and the dragon together, though long he had held sway over the hoard of treasure, and the Prince of Rings scorned to employ a troop against the wide-flying monster in the great warfare. Nor did he dread the striving, nor did he think much of this battle with the dragon, of his might and courage, for that formerly in close conflict had he escaped many a time from the crashings of battle, since he, the victorious swordman, cleansed the grey hall in heart, of Hrothgar his kinsman, and had grappled in the contest with the mother of Grendel, of the loathly kin. Nor was that the least hand-to-hand fight, when Hygelac was slain there in the Frisian land, when the king of the Geats, the friendly lord of the folk, the son of Hrethel, died in the battle-rush, beaten down by the sword, drunk with blood-drinking. Then fled Beowulf by his very own craft and swam through the seas, and he had on his arm alone 30 battle trappings when he went down to the sea. Nor did the Hetware need to be boasting of that battle on foot, they who bore their linden shields against him, and few of them ever reached their homes safe from that wolf of the battle. But Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, swam o'er the expanse of waters, miserable and solitary, back to his people, where Hygd proffered him treasures and a kingdom, rings and dominion. She did not think that her son Heardred would know how to hold their native seats against strangers, now that Hygelac was dead. Nor could the wretched people prevail upon the Etheling, Beowulf, in any wise to show himself lord of Heardred, or to be choosing the kinship. Nevertheless, he gave friendly counsel to the folk with grace and honor, until he, Heardred, was older, and held sway over the Weedergeats. Then those exiles, the sons of Othere, sought him over the seas. They had rebelled against the lord of the Swedes, the best of the sea kings, that famous chieftain of those who bestowed rings in Sweden, and that was life's limit to him. For the son of Hygelac, famishing there, was allotted a deadly wound by the swing of a sword, and the son of Oganthau went away thence to visit his homestead when Reardred lay dead, and left Beowulf to sit on the throne and to rule the Goths. And he was a good king. He was minded in after days to be requiting the fall of the prince. He was a friend to the wretched Edgils, and helped Edgils, the son of Arthair, with an army, with warriors, and with weapons over the wide seas. And then he wrought vengeance with cold and painful journeyings, and deprived the king, Onela, of life. Thus the son of Ecgtheow had escaped all the malice and the hurtful contests and the courageous encounters, till the day on which he was to wage war with the dragon. And so it came to pass that the lord of the Geats went forth with 12 others, and inflamed with fury, to spy out the dragon. For he had heard tell of the malice and hatred he had shown to men, whence arose that feud. By the hand of the informer, famous treasure came into their possession. He was the 13th man on the troop who set on foot the beginning of the conflict, and the sorrowful captive must show the way thither. He against his will went to the earth hall, for he alone knew the barrow under the ground near to the sea surge, where he was seething, the cavern that was full of ornaments and filigree, and the uncanny guardian thereof, the painting war-wolf, held possession of the treasures, and an ancient was he under the earth. It was no easy bargain to be gaining for any living man. So the battle-hardened king sat down on the cliff, and took leave of his hearth comrades, he the gold friend of the Geats. And his heart was sad, wavering, and ready for death, and Weird came very near to him, who would be greeting the venerable warrior, and be seeking his soul treasure, to divide asunder his life from his body. And not long after that was the soul of the Etheling imprisoned in the flesh. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow. Many a war rush I escaped from in my youth, in times of conflict, and well I call it all to mind. I was 7 years old when the Lord of Treasures, the friendly lord of the folk, took me away from my father, and King Hrethel had me in thrall, and gave me treasure, and feasted me, and kept the peace. Nor was I a whit less dear a child to him than any of his own kin, Herebald, and Hæthcyn, or my own dear Hygelac, and for the eldest was a murder bed most unhappily made up by the deeds of a kinsman. When Hæthcyn, his lordly friend, brought him low with an arrow from out of his horn bow, and missing the mark he shot through his brother with a bloody javelin. And that was a fight not to be atoned for by gifts of money, and a crime it was, and wearying to the soul in his breast. Nevertheless the Atheling must unavenged be losing his life. For so it is a sorrowful thing for a venerable man to see his son riding the gallows tree, when he singeth a dirge, a sorrowful song, as his son hangeth, a joy to the ravens. And he, very old, may not give him any help, and every morning at the feasting he is reminded of his son's journey elsewhither, and he careth not to await another heir within the cities, when he alone, through the fatality of death, hath found out the deeds. Heart-broken he looks on the bower of his son, on the wasted wine-hall, become the hiding place for the winds and bereft of the revels. The riders are sleeping, the heroes in the tomb, nor is any sound of harping or games in the courts as erewhile there were. Then he goeth to the sleeping place, and chanteth a sorrow song, the one for the other, and all too spacious seemed to him the fields and the dwelling house. So the prince of the Geats bore welling heart sorrow after Haribald's death, nor wit could he requite the feud on the murderer, nor visit his hate on that warrior with loathly deeds, though by no means was he dear to him. He then forsook the joys of life because of that sorrow wound which befell him, and chose the light of God, and left to his sons land and towns when he departed his life as a rich man doth. Then was there strife and struggle between the Swedes and the Geats, and over the wide seas there was warfare between them, a hardy battle striving, when Hrethel met with his death. And the children of Angventhau were brave and battle-fierce, and would not keep the peace on the high seas, but round about Rohansenborg they often worked terrible and dire distress. And my kinsman wrought vengeance for that feud and crime, as all men know, though the other bought his life with a hard bargain. And war was threatening Hythsen, the lord of the Geats. Then I heard tell that on the morrow one brother, the other avenged, on the slayer with the edge of the sword, whereas Ongenthau seeketh out Eofor. The war helmet was shattered, and the ancient of the Swedes fell prone, all sword pale. And well enough the hand kept in mind the feud, and withheld not the deadly blow. And I yielded him back in the warfare the treasures he gave me with the flashing sword, as was granted to me. And he gave me land, and a dwelling, and a pleasant country. And he had no need to seek among the Gifthas, or the Speardanes, or in Sweden a worse war-wolf, or to buy one that was worthy. And I would always be before him in the troop, alone in the front of the battle, and so forever will I be striving, whilst this sword endureth, that earlier and later has often stood me in good stead, since the days when for doughtiness I was a handslayer to Day Raven, the champion of the Hugs. Nor was he fated to bring ornaments or breast trappings to the Frisian king, but he, the guardian of the standard, he, the Etheling, fell on the battlefield all too quickly. Nor was the sword edge his bane, but the battle grip broke the whelmings of his heart and the bones of his body. Now shall my sword edge, my hand and hard weapon, be fighting for the horde. Beowulf, moreover, now for the last time spake these boastful words. In many a war I risked my life in the days of my youth, yet still will I seek a feud. I, the old guardian of the people, will work a glorious deed, if the wicked Scather cometh out from his earth palace to seek me. Then he saluted for the last time each of the warriors, the brave wearers of helmets, the dear companions. I would not carry a sword or weapon against the dragon if I knew how else I might maintain my boast against the monster, as I formerly did against Grendel. But in this conflict I expect the hot battle fire, both breath and poison. Therefore I have both shield and a byrnie. I will not flee from the warder of the barrow a foot's space, but it shall be with me at the wall of the barrow, as Weird shall direct, who created all men. I am strong in soul, so that I will refrain from boasting against the warflyer. Await ye on the barrow guarded by byrnies. O ye warriors in armor, and see which of us two will better survive his wounds after the battle rush. This is no journey for you, nor fitting for any man save only for me, that he should share a conflict with the monster and do deeds worthy of an earl. I will gain possession of the gold by my courage, or battle and deadly evil shall take away your lord. Then the strong warrior hard under helm arose beside his shield, and carried his shirt of mail under the rocky cliffs, and trusted in the strength of himself alone. Nor was that a coward's journey. Then Beowulf, possessed of many virtues, who had escaped in many a conflict and crashing of battle when men encountered on foot, saw standing by the wall of the barrow an arc of rock, and a stream broke out thence from the barrow, and the whelming of that river was hot with battle fires. Nor could he survive any while near to the horde, unburnt because of the flame of the dragon. Then in a fury the prince of the Weeder Geats let a torrent of words escape from his breast, and the stout-hearted one stormed. And his war-clear voice resounded under the hoar-cliffs. And hatred was stirred, for the guardian of the hoard recognized well the voice of Beowulf. And there was no time to be seeking friendship. And the breath of the monster, the hot battle sweat, came forth from the rock at the first, and the earth resounded. The warrior, the lord of the Geats, raised his shield under the barrow against the terrible sprite. Now the heart of the dragon was stirred up to seek the conflict. The good war-king had formally drawn his sword, the ancient heirloom, not slow of edge. And each of them who intended evil was a terror the one to the other. And the stern-minded one, he, the prince of friendly rulers, stood by his steep shield, and he and the dragon fell quickly together. Beowulf waited wearily all in his war gear. Then the flaming monster bent as he charged, hastening to his doom. The shield well protected life and body of the famous warrior, for a lesser while than he had wielded it, if he was to be wielding victory in that contest on the first day. But Weird had not so fated it. And the lord of the Geats uplifted his hand, and struck at the horribly bright one heavy with heirlooms, so that the edge, stained with blood, gave way on the bone, and bit in less strongly than its master had need of when pressed by the business. Then after the battle swing, the guardian of the barrow was rough-minded, and cast forth slaughter fire. Battle flames flashed far and wide, and the son of the Geats could not boast of victory in the conflict. The sword had failed him, naked in the battle, as was unfitting for so well-tempered a steel. It was not easy for the famous son of Ecgtheow to give up possession of the bottom of the sea, and that he should against his will dwell in some place far otherwhere, as must each man let go these fleeting days sooner or later. And not long after this, Beowulf and the monster met together again. The guardian of the hoard took good heart, and smoke was fuming in his breast, and fierce were his sufferings as the flames embraced him, he who before had ruled over the folk. Nor at all in a troop did his hand comrades stand round him, the warrior of Ethelings, showing courage in the battle, but they fled into a wood, their lives to be saving. And the mind of one of them was surging with sorrows, for to him, whose thoughts are pure, friendship cannot ever change.